Hey, so I'm just out here this Tuesday morning and really admiring the spider webs. I don't think you can see them here. There's a little spider in his home in that web, but I love how the light glistens off of spider webs. I've always loved that, even though, I have arachnophobia. I I love the way that looks, and I'm at a point now where my anxiety doesn't get away from me, so I can even see the spiders like that in their home and, not be anxious because I know where I am, I know where they are, and I know they're not going to come out of nowhere to attack me. And I think that actually has a lot to do with conflict oriented and conflict adverse people. Um, I think some of us look like the spiders to some people, and some of us look like the people who come to smash the spiders to some people. And I think this is really, really interesting because we're just as, you know, we're just as disturbing to spiders as they are to us in a way. I mean, what if they have human phobia? What if they're terrified that all of us are going to smash them? What if that's why they ever bite us? Because the rumors are, people in spider culture are, dangerous and scary. So I tend to think about these perspective differences. And while up here in the Bay Area, I've made some new friends, and I've really come to appreciate the value of open-minded people. I'm not talking about the people who are, so spiritually woke that they justify attacking other people. I'm talking about the people who, are so open-minded, you're like, I didn't know that people like this existed, where they're both respectful and open-minded, to a point where I'm like, did they just learn a secret that all of us missed? And what's really fascinating is it's intoxicating. Like it's you can catch it too. The more time we spend around, this couple, the more I realize, like, we're changing. Me and my wife are changing, and it's catching. And I love it. So it's made me think a lot about conflict. I grew up, and I was one of those conflict-oriented people for sure. And I was surrounded by a bunch of either conflict adverse or conflict avoidant people. And those are two different types of people. It's one thing to be conflict averse. Definitely one of the people who I just talked about that we met out here, one of them, he's actually conflict averse. But there's a big difference between conflict averse and conflict avoidant. And I'm realizing I was surrounded by people who were conflict averse by nature, and conflict avoidant based on a stigma of what conflict is. So let me talk to you about how to avoid conflict-oriented people. So first and foremost, if you feel like there are people in your life or people that you run into that are just conflict-oriented, first keep in mind that not all conflict is aggressive. Not all conflict is about you. Not all conflict is mean in nature. A lot of the time, honesty is conflictual. So when when people believe in, let's say, lies, let's say people are in a cult or something like that, they could be really nice. So anybody who brings a contradicting truth or facts that contradict their beliefs, they're going to seem conflict oriented. And traditionally, we've lived in a world that say, leave people's beliefs alone, let them believe what they want to believe. And this has become less and less effective the more we get into a digitally connected era. And we're all having to come to terms with that hard truth that a lot of the things that used to work aren't working anymore, or they're becoming so ineffective that we have to find better ways. So what I've realized is if you want to resolve things with conflict-oriented people, because you can't avoid them, understand that ignoring these people only attracts them to you. You know this. I mean, it's the most frustrating thing for you if you're, conflict avoidant, or even if you're conflict averse. It's that plague that you just can't get rid of. When you ignore people, they just keep coming back. So the irony is there's some people that want to talk about ideas, and there are other people that identify with their ideas. And it doesn't matter whether or not you're a conflict-oriented person or just conflictual in nature, whether or not you're conflict adverse, or whether or not you're conflict avoidant. Some people identify with their ideas, and you know who you are. If somebody is talking about something you believe in and you find it personally upsetting, you're being triggered. Because we're not supposed to identify with ideas, even if we believe in them, even if we know them to be true in our heart of hearts. It is our responsibility not to personally identify with ideas, period, even if they're our own ideas. And this is something that affects people that are, conflict oriented, who seek out conflict. People who seek out conflict, they identify with their ideas too much. And people who are conflict avoidant, they also identify with ideas too much. And here's the thing, you are only yourself. You are a lack of ideas. You are a personality. You are a being that starts out with no ideas and is more inclined to believe, enjoy, or feel community with certain ideas that are either your own or others. But what we need to keep in mind is we are not our ideas. And as soon as we start thinking that our ideas define us, that that the fact that we're a loving person defines us, so we're triggered when people suggest that, we're not as good at loving as we think we are. If we identify with being religious, if we identify with a religion, if we identify with a religious figure, and then other people, speak their personal truth about that religion or religious idea or religious figure, it's our fault if we're triggered. It's our fault if we believe that they're saying something offensive. Even the conflict adverse people oftentimes create their own misery by doing this, by believing that just because somebody speaks their personal truth, that somehow they're being offensive. And that's it. You have to take accountability for the fact that you are not your ideas. You are not the ideas you believe in. You are not bound even by facts. And this is evident in the people who have no interest in facts. And this is one of the most paradoxical things about the human family is our beliefs work. Our beliefs work for us. And sometimes they don't always work for us. But here's the thing is, our beliefs are only ever our beliefs. There are no beliefs that work well for everyone. And this is one of those things. This is the kind of thing where you say that there's no such thing as absolute beliefs. And that really triggers people on both the religious side and as well as the scientific fact side, because the irony is, just like, people who believe that their religious beliefs are absolute will affect other people due to this devout dedication to their belief, and in the past, people have killed in the name of God, have raped in the name of God, in all different types of religion. I'm not blaming one in particular. I'm not even blaming religion for this, because on the flip side, the scientific community thinks just because facts apply to all of us, that's why they're facts, that people need to believe in them. And here's the irony. Scientists believe in facts the same way religious people believe in their beliefs. And this is really, really disconcerting for a lot of scientific minds. And as somebody who's a huge fan of scientific fact, I understand that this is the kind of thing that triggers people. And it's really important to keep in mind that facts may be true whether or not people believe in them, but some people need to see before they can believe. And interestingly enough, the non-scientific community is more about seeing in order to believe, whereas the scientific community is oddly enough about seeing because they believe in mathematic formulas and the principles of numbers and equations. They can believe before they start creating anything, before they ever have anything to see. That their belief in logic and numbers literally leads them to seeing. And this is quite fascinating, because it's quite the opposite for some people. And it's really interesting how the scientific community believes that they will believe what they see, but that's not quite the case, because if you can believe in math and numbers, that's not the same thing as seeing something. There's a big difference between planning a building with math and numbers and, the people who don't believe it could be built because they don't believe in math and numbers, and then they'll believe it when they see it. And that's quite fascinating to even understand that to some people, math, numbers, science, and facts are more a matter of belief. And to the people who believe in math, numbers, science, and facts, it's, believing is seeing from the other perspective. And this is paradoxical, and this will exist as long as there are different types of people. And I am living proof that I can believe in numbers, math, science, and facts, and understand that I will never be like the people who can believe in these things and see them beforehand. Like, I have to see something, believe I can plan it out with numbers, math, and science, to motivate myself to do that work, where people will see things based on the numbers, math, and science that they do. And I think that's quite fascinating. So I'm like living proof that we need to start thinking differently and communicating differently, because if we're going to avoid conflict, we have to understand that if we feel like somebody is bringing conflict to our doorstep, that's our fault. It's our fault for not listening, not our fault for not trying to understand them better when we had a chance. And it's our fault for not knowing how to do this. But even though that's our fault, it's also our responsibility to improve ourselves. And being open-minded is really not about being woke. It's not about being spiritual. It's not about tolerating everything. It's understanding that if we don't tolerate something, we're the ones to blame for not tolerating something. And that's, if you don't tolerate something, that's not love. And if you love an idea more than other people, that's literally bigotry. That's literally prejudice. Because people who are racist believed in an idea more than loving other people. People who are sexist believe in an idea more than other people. People who are bigoted towards religion believe in an idea like science or facts more than other people. They don't love those people enough to help them understand the world that they live in. And the crazy thing is we look at conversion as a religious process, but in reality, conversion is just helping people understand you. And when we try and convert people to an idea, it feels like the stigma of conversion. But when we let people get to know us, when we offer people an opportunity for us to teach them what we know, and we willingly advertise this opportunity for people, we will attract the people who we least expected to learn what we are blessed to understand. And in reality, there are certain ideas that are going to be more popular when given the opportunity to teach them. And there are certain ideas that have been popular for a long, long time that people are not interested in. And this is really upsetting, whether it's on the science side or the religious side of life, the believers, the seers, whether or not it's the conflict-oriented people or the conflict-adverse people. We need to accept that as long as we don't identify with our ideas, we won't feel the disgust that leads to hate, that leads to anger, that leads to violence on either side, either receiving it or giving it. Because in reality, there's many types of violence. There's passive aggressive violence that leads to emotional abuse. So unless you don't believe that emotional abuse is a real thing, unless you don't believe that, battered wives can be battered simply from emotional abuse, emotional torture, feel trapped in a loveless marriage, even though their husband may never hit them. Their husband or their wife may never hit them. You need to keep in mind that if you don't believe that words can be violence, you don't believe in emotional abuse. You don't believe that there's anything that could be said to a child that can be just as destructive as hitting them. And that's really, really disturbing. That's something I had to wake up to, because I didn't always want to believe that, I didn't always want to believe that words could hurt. But if a parent tells a child, I hate you and I resent you and I regret you being born, if you don't believe that's emotional violence, then, it's really just a type of emotional bigotry. Like, that's no different than being racist or sexist or, any sort of idea that believes that other people are worth less. And it's really, really dangerous, because the more we try and avoid conflict, really, really try and avoid it, the more we create it. Because we're telling other people that we don't care about any ideas that, don't tolerate ours. And that's just irrational. That's just crazy. That's just closed-minded. That's as closed-minded as being a bigot or a racist or a sexist. It really is. It's something that our feelings, if we're on the closed-minded side of things, it's our feelings that feel justified to think like, well, if they're saying all these hateful things about the thing that I identify with, they're in the wrong. But, it's one of those things we have to accept that if you identify with Jesus and somebody upsets you because they're talking about Jesus, that's your fault. They're not wrong. And you're not right. The same way that, you believe that they're not right and that you're not wrong. The same thing applies to them. When it comes to beliefs, whatever beliefs people hold, whether or not it's in science or religion, you have to accept that it's not about who's right or wrong. It's the very fact that you believe that they're not right and that you're not wrong, and that also applies to them. That's the irrational logic of philosophical beliefs. And whether or not you think it's absolutely real, whether or not you think science or your religion is absolutely true, you need to accept that even if people believe otherwise, they are equally as right as you. And until we accept this paradox of the human community, we will continue to divide each other based on our own disgust because we want absolute tolerance, which means zero tolerance of beliefs that contradict our beliefs. And as we know, zero tolerance doesn't work. It doesn't. Zero tolerance is why they ended the prohibition. Zero tolerance is why, kids got kicked out of school for making mistakes. Not even hurting anyone or doing anything bad, just literally making mistakes and breaking arbitrary rules. These zero tolerance things don't work. And yet we do them all the time because we're never taught that there are beliefs that will contradict our beliefs. And if we don't tolerate those beliefs, if we don't listen to them, if we don't listen to the people that hold those beliefs that contradict our beliefs, we're going to get more and more divided. Like the days when, racism wasn't in secret. It was a public thing. Back in the days when, slavery wasn't in secret. It was a public thing. We have become more divided because we push our beliefs into this personal place and thinking we'll never have to deal with the people that we believe are wrong, we believe are sinners, we believe are evil, we believe are dumb. And that's just not the case. And as the world becomes more digitally connected, we have to accept that our beliefs are both not wrong and not right at the same time. And it really depends on who we're around. And if we're not willing to tolerate intolerance of our beliefs, we only create conflict and making ourselves the victim. So it's time for us to let go of this victim mentality, thinking that just because people disagree with us and just because people disagree with us in a way we believe is disrespectful, that's their fault. It's never been true. It's just worked better in the past. But it's also led to people keeping deep, dark secrets that families didn't know about. Deep, dark secrets that we didn't know about certain companies that we've given millions or billions or trillions of dollars to over the years. Deep, dark secrets that, we believed in countries and nations that turned out to be horrible. There was a time when we believed, America, the American we believed that maybe Hitler was onto something with fascism as opposed to communism in Russia. And there was a huge philosophical political debate of whether or not, communism or fascism was the socialism we would adopt in America. And then we realized pretty quickly, we want neither of these. But there was a time when we believed that Hitler was more right. There was a time where Hitler was on the cover of Time magazine. So what we need to understand is if we don't practice the heuristic of our beliefs are equally not wrong and not right at the same time, we will continue to fall into these human traps where we believe in the wrong idea, we believe in the wrong person, we believe in the wrong God, or we believe in the wrong science. And it happens on every end of the spectrum. We need more understanding. We need more open-mindedness. We need to break our rules more if we want to prove that we love the people around us. That we can love the people that we're told are unlovable. Because unless you believe that, there are some people who just fundamentally don't deserve to be loved, not because of their actions, but just because of who they are, things they can't control. Not their choices, but literally like where they were born, what they were taught as a child, like the color of their skin, the sexual organ they have, what they like to do for fun, what they like to do for love. Then we need to understand that disgust is what leads to hate. It's what leads to violence. And if we don't believe we're a hateful person or a violent person, then we need to understand that it all starts with disgust. And nothing causes more conflicts and victim mentality than feeling disgusted. And that's our fault. It's our responsibility. And if we don't hold ourselves accountable, we'll only become more and more lonely, more and more angry, more and more prone to being violent, or more and more prone to letting other people be violent for us, teaching other people a lesson, giving them what they deserve, the sort of thing that enabled lynch mobs and Nazi behavior. And these are the very things that we have to wake up to, the very things that I had to wake up to. Because I was the more conservative type. I was about as conservative and fundamental as they come. And now I'm realizing that I can still be conservative, but I can't be conservative in the way humans have defined it for generations. And I'm having to redefine conservatism in a way that I'm realizing none of the sides like. And I'm okay with that. I've dealt with the loneliness of being right, believing that I'm right, believing that I'm divinely, absolutely right. I've dealt with that loneliness, the not knowing myself, the anxiety, the depression, the feeling confused, the doubt. But honestly, I let myself go through the 5 stages of grief and realized that I was cycling between denial and anger so much that I never let myself grieve the fact that what I was taught doesn't work anymore. And that's not the fault of the people who taught it to me. That doesn't make them bad just because they were wrong. Just like it's never bad that a child is wrong in school. I mean, what's going to make a child hate progressing, hate growing, hate learning more than feeling like being wrong is bad? And that's where we've come. We've come understanding that we're all equally failures. And until we start to teach one another what we believe in, why we believe it, and be open-minded to why they disagree, even if it hurts our feelings, then we're just as bad as the people that we believe are bad.